Hello, 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 hello. How you doing? As you can tell, I'm sitting outside in nature. Uh, it's the day before my big birthday. I'll be 55 tomorrow if the good Lord lets me live to see tomorrow. I'm so glad that I made it this far. Thank you, God. I just wanted to do a video. I'm going to try not to make it too long, but it's a lot of stuff. I've been very reflective in the last couple of months. A lot has happened. I've been hurt on my job. I've had medical issues. Had a medical scare. I've been battling depression, because my mother passed away last year. And then 18 months before that, my dad passed. So I've lost both parents in less than 2 years. And I've had some health issues, family issues, and things of that nature. Normal life stuff, I guess. For some people, that's normal life. But I had a lot going on. And I just want to talk. I said I was going to write all this stuff down and come from a script, but I'm just going to say how I feel about a lot of things. And for those of you, some of you, I'm going to be sending the link to this video personally, because there are certain things that only you and I all know, or certain things that I want you to pay a close attention to. But I look back over my life. We wasn't rich, but we wasn't poor either. Just working class family. I was born in North Carolina, Fayetteville, North Carolina, and my dad was in the military. My mother, for a couple of years, she was a homemaker, and then she started working. My mother used to be a cosmetologist, and my dad was an Army sergeant. But when I was born, my dad wanted my mom to be home. She was like, when the kids come home from school, I want one of us there. So he just worked extra job, did what he had to do, and to make sure the house was taken care of. And she didn't start working again until I got a little bit older. But yeah, I was young as a three, and youngest of 3 kids, a brother and older sister, and then me. I grew up like an only child because they were much older. When they were graduating high school, I was just finishing kindergarten. It's a big gap between us, My brother's almost 12 and a half years older. My sister skipped a grade, so she graduated with my brother. So my sister and I are like 11 years apart. So it's like I grew up like an only child, even though I have siblings. And that really shaped who I am as a person. I'm a loner by nature. I'm an introvert. And I keep to myself a lot. It's hard. I could do this stuff here all day. I could be on a stage performing stand-up comedy, which I did for a couple of years. I could do that, no problem. Filmmaking, acting, not a problem. Social interaction, I'm like a fish out of water. I'm a natural loner. Probably why I've had some problems with relationships over the years, because I'm not a talker. I'm not a chatty person. I value solitude and quiet time. So that pretty much, my early childhood years pretty much shaped the man that I am now. I like staying at home, watching a movie, watching a documentary. I've never been a clubber or a bar person. Large crowds and loud music, that's not my thing. But you give me a book to read, or you give me a good documentary or something educational on the History Channel, Discovery Channel, A&E, things like that, I'm all in. I'm a very family-oriented type person. I just like being at home or being with my dog or my little chihuahua. So I've always been a loner. I've always been kind of like, I guess, like a stick out like a thumb. I've never been the crowd person. I've always been the odd man out. And I'm okay with that. It took me a while to be okay with that. All through my teenage and young adult years, it was awkward. It was difficult. And but yeah, I grew up as a loner, like an only child. I was a loner, and I always felt out of place in social settings. Actually, a lot of people don't believe it. Actually, I was very shy. Um, I was, really. I know you can't tell now, but I was a very shy kid. I was a very clumsy kid because I grew up so fast. I grew like damn near a foot in a year. They thought something was wrong with me. I got real tall real quick. I was always the tall kid in class, but I got really tall really fast. Because like from the 6th grade to the 7th, I went from 5'7" to 6'1". I was 6'1" in the 7th grade. I was 6'1" in the 7th grade. So I was an awkward kid. I was clumsy. I was shy. I had acne. My voice was changing. All that stuff. And then I was a kid growing up in the country. My parents moved back to Alabama when I was like 10. So I was in a strange place that I only visited during the summer, once a couple of days in the summer. Now I'm living there in the country. So I was a city boy, now living in the country. And that was a big culture shock for me. Big culture shock. And I grew up there and went off to college after high school. And then from there I went to the big city, moved to Atlanta. Stayed there from 93 to 2011. Then I went to New York City area. Then from there, now I'm in Ohio. I've had a lot of experiences in between. Some good, some bad. Well, some good and some bad. I've had some good experiences, some bad experiences. When I was 5, 6 years old, I got diagnosed as having hyperactivity. They didn't know nothing about that back in the 70s. They just gave you they gave kids Ritalin. And the best way I can describe Ritalin back then was like somebody slowing you all the way down. That's what you felt like all day. You were just in a stupor, like in a zombie-like state. And what was weird, they would give me half of the pill was so strong they would break it in half. They would give me half the pill in the morning on the way to school, and then just as it started to wear off around lunchtime, they would give me the other half. So my teacher, back in those days, they kept the medicine in the classroom. The teacher could give you the medicine. And I had a teacher that was real mean, and she would humiliate me in front of the whole class. She would say, Daryl, it's time to take your crazy pill because you won't act right. And she would stand up there and she would physically put the pill in my mouth in front of the whole class. And kids would be laughing, and it would hurt so bad. I remember that. I remember it vividly, how bad it would hurt me for her to do that to me. I would go home, I'd be crying. And finally my parents were like, no, we're not going to have you taking this medicine anymore. Because they saw the effect it had on me. It was like I was a zombie. And I went home. I'll never forget, my brother was home on leave from the military. And I told him what that teacher was doing to me. Because back in those days, in black community, your teachers lived in the same neighborhood as you. Your principal, your teacher, your pastor, they all lived in the same neighborhood. Now people all over God's creation. But so my teacher lived up the street and up the block and on the next street from me. And she was a light-skinned lady. That whole colorism thing, light-skinned, dark-skinned, that's a very real thing down south. So, but I remember my mom used to press my hair out on Sunday nights, Saturday nights for church the next day, and then Sunday night for school all next week. I don't know how much, no matter how much she pressed my hair, my afro would never get no longer than that. I was always a little chubby kid with a little baby fro. So, yeah, so it was always a little bitty fro. I used to get, and kids used to tease me, yeah, your hair won't grow, da 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 da. Things of that nature. Kids look for any reason to pick with each other. But I remember going to school one day, and she got mad with me. And I was telling my mom on the way to school, I was crying. I was pleading. I tried to pretend like I was sick so she wouldn't let me stay home. Because that teacher was so mean to me. And I was telling her, I said, Mom, she's mean to me. Mama, she's mean to me. Well, we here now. You can go to school. You know, parents didn't play that back in the day. Unless you was knocking on death's door, you was going to school. So I went in and I looked up and see the teacher had my mom's phone number. Oh, Daryl's acting up in class, da 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 da. And back in those days, whatever a teacher said, that was pretty much gospel truth as far as parents were concerned. You get your ass whooped. And I said, Mama, she's not telling the truth. She's not telling the truth. And I kept crying. I kept crying. I kept crying. And my sister was home for the break, and it was cold. I'll never forget it. And my mom walked me to school. That's how close we lived to the school. For those of you in Fayetteville, y'all know I went to Ferguson Elementary School, so y'all know where that is. For those of you who are familiar with Fayetteville, it's Ferguson Elementary, E. Smith High School is over in the same area where Fayetteville State is. That's where the black people live. Middle class and upper middle class black people lived over there. A lot of the people in our neighborhood were either college graduates or either their husbands were in the military, like my father, or retired military. So Mom walked me to school. I had on my winter coat. And just to give you an idea of the financial situation, you could put stuff on layaway back in those days. So my mom had just got my coat out of layaway. And I was happy to have this nice new coat to wear to school. I got a new winter coat every year. And I had one for church and one for school. So I was, coat rack was in the corner of the room. So I had to hang up my coat, put my gloves and stuff in the cubby. Each student had a cubby hole. And she waited good. She looked at my mom walk off and turn the corner. And she went over there to start knocking my coat down. She said, you didn't hang your coat up right. She just kept knocking it down. I had to pick it up and put it back on the hanger right. And every time she did this about 10 times. And the kids were laughing and everything. So finally that last time, she knocked it down. I refused to put it back up, and she was bending over to pick up her yardstick to hit me with it. And I kicked her in the ass as hard as I could, and I ran out the door, and I ran all the way home, crying, tears in my face. I knew I was going to get a whooping when I got home because I knew she had got on the phone and told my mom, and I know they called the police because I left the school. And my brother, because my mom had hopped in the car, went around the neighborhood looking for me. My brother found me because he was at the door. He was shaving and stuff because he was home on leave. My sister was in the kitchen doing something. I told him what happened. He said, come on in, I got this. And I don't know what my brother did, but that lady the rest of the year never bothered me again. But see, my brother was in the streets. So I can only imagine, looking back now as a man, what he probably said or did. But that woman would see me coming the other way, and I'd be out with my mama, and she would go the other way. Or if I was on the street, because a lot of kids that I was friends with and played with lived on that street where she lived, she would see me and she'd be standing up in her window, and I'd look over at her and stand up in the window looking at me, and she would close the curtain. And kids, and little kids, and older teenage boys like, why does she do that every time you come here? I said, I don't know. And one of my brother's older friends was next door neighbors to the lady, and he would just shake his head and laugh. He said, and he walked up to me one day and said, you Eugene's little brother, aren't you? I said, uh-huh. And he looked at the other guy, and he introduced me to one of my classmates' older brothers. So they all the kids in the neighborhood, we all knew each other. Our older brothers played together, and then we played together. So he's like, hey, this is Eugene's little brother. Oh, okay. So I never had no problems going forward with her. Never had no more problems. That lady used to treat me so bad. Used to just mess with me. And, I'm 6 years old, and she was doing that to me. And that particular day, she got so mad when I kept knocking my coat down. She grabbed me by my little mini afro and said, I'm gonna straighten these nigger naps out. That's what she said to me. Black lady. And she was pulling my hair, trying to break me. She was trying to break me, a 6-year-old boy. And I thought things were gonna get better. Next year I went to same school, and I had a white teacher this time. Old lady, she was in her last year of teaching. She was a real, real old lady. And she just beat the crap out of all the black kids, especially the boys. But she would never hit any of the white kids, ever. The only one she hit, she was this poor white trash girl. I mean, you know, I know that's not politically correct, but she came from the same side of the track as the rest of us. And she would give that girl a hard time. But that girl, we later found out, was being neglected because that girl missed almost 45 days of school. It got to the point where they had to send a social worker to make the parent send her to school. And I was the only girl that she ever hit with a yardstick. Everybody else, black, you got hit on. And she had this cardboard box in her classroom, and she used it to isolate students that she deemed unruly. And she sat me behind it because this white kid, I had seen the movie Roots, and I knew what the word nigger meant. And he called me a nigger. And I whooped his ass. I mean, when I tell you, the ancestors gave me strength, like Red Bull gives you wings, the ancestors gave me strength. I whooped his ass, bloodied his, busted his lip, blacked his eye, kicked him in his ass a few times. Whole shot. And she put me behind that box. It was around September. She said, you're going to be back behind this box the rest of the year. And I cried every day. And she tried to get my parents to put me in special ed. She said I was uncontrollable and I had behavior problems. And it was the school in town where they didn't even put you in. She didn't want me to be in a regular special ed. She wanted to have me placed in a special ed school for behavioral issues. It was called Honeycutt. And the reason I knew where Honeycutt was because I used to go to the YMCA after school, during the summer camp program. And then after school, I would go 3 times a week. And then on the weekends, I'd go all day Saturday at the YMCA. And Honeycutt was next door to the YMCA. For those of you in Fayetteville, you remember what Honeycutt was, next door to the YMCA. So, she tried to get my parents to sign to send me there. My parents refused. And they said, he doesn't have different problems. He said, you got a problem with my child. You got a problem with black kid. And by this time, I had sat behind that box, September, October, November, right up to Christmas break. And another parent saw me behind the box. And I never told it was a white parent, as a matter of fact. Just happened to be somebody that was at one time in the army with my dad, told his wife. Well, his wife told him, and he told my dad, and my mom sat me down and asked me what happened. And damn. That was tough. That was tough as hell right there. That did a number on me mentally. To this day, I don't like being in closed, confined spaces. Because of that. Sitting behind that box. And every so often, I'll raise my hand and ask a question. Say, you don't get to ask questions behind the box. Whenever we walked to the bathroom or went to, she wouldn't allow me to have recess, or whenever the kids be outside playing, I had to stand under the tree behind her. I couldn't stand beside her. I had to stand behind her. Sometimes she would make me stand and face the tree. Like you put your nose in the corner, I had to put my nose on the tree. Just psychological damage. Yeah, I went through all that. And I write about it in my film script. That's going to be in there. My autobiography. That's all this stuff I'm telling you is in there, but in more detail. I'm just giving you the cliff notes because I don't want to have you here all day. But my parents found out, and there was hell to pay. Because out of all her students, some of them would be behind the box for a day or a week. She put me behind them for months. And the principal of my school, back in them days, you could paddle kids and you do the whole shot. You know, I'm all for paddling. I believe they need to bring that back because some kids need their asses whooped. But um, that isolation was psychological, and I mean, it really messed me up for a minute. I had a lot of anger, and because I was already an overweight kid, I was dealing with being called fat and being made fun of, and but a lot of that overweight stuff came from when my mother was pregnant with me. My dad was in Vietnam. My mom learned how to drive because she was pregnant with me and had I had two older siblings in the house, and she had to learn how to drive. Um, and yeah, on the day I was born, my dad almost got killed in combat. The tank he was riding on hit a mine, and it blew the tank over in the part he was in off in the ditch, and it killed the person that was driving the tank. And the Red Cross found him and told him that my mother had given birth to me. That's how he found out I was born, on the side of a road in Vietnam, recovering from an injury. And see, my mom was stressed out about that while she was carrying me. My dad being in Vietnam, she got two older kids, and then she's pregnant with me, can't drive, husband on the other side of the world. And my grandmother, her mother was dying of cancer. And my grandmother died the Wednesday before Thanksgiving. My mother and I rode a train down so she could be with her that last time. And my grandmother died that morning, that Wednesday morning. But anyway, back to my parents found out about that's my ADHD. I ramble sometimes. Forgive me. My mother and father found out about what was being done to me. And not only did they make her take me from behind the box, they made the principal have her remove the box from the classroom. So that box was gone and done away with forever. And just imagine if my parents had agreed with her and signed to put me in a school for kids with special needs, behavior disorders. Look at what would have happened. Just imagine what would have happened in my life. Everybody that I know that teacher convinced to send over there, all of them ended up, and I looked them up years later, all of them ended up either in and out of jail, in and out of drug rehab. Their lives just took a... God spared me from that because I had parents that were strong enough to say no. And they advocated for me. Then something else traumatic happened. The first 3 years of my school life was just first grade, second grade, third grade were traumatic, just real traumatic. For people my age, we went through something that you younger people don't know about called busing. I was bused across town from my African-American neighborhood to a white neighborhood. That's when busing first started back in the 70s. And I got bused across town to a school called Lucille Saunders Elementary School. For those of you in Fayetteville, you know all about it. I don't even know if they still open or not, but it was down the street from Reed Rouse High School. And yeah, I spent third and fourth grade there. Third grade, this boy called me a nigger again. He got beat up again. This is another kid. And I blooded him up really bad. And the lady said, "What's the matter with you?" She grabbed me. She ain't grabbed the white kid. She grabbed me. "What's the matter with you?" "What? Oh my God, blood's everywhere. You are a savage." I said, "He called me so-and-so, and he called me a nigger, and I know what that means. That's a bad word." And she stopped mid. She let me go. She looked me in my face, and she said, "You should be proud to be called a nigger. That's what you are." Now, mind you, up until that point, that was a teacher's aide, not my teacher. That was a teacher's aide. And I'm going to say her name. Her name was Miss Ross. I used to love Miss Ross. I thought she was the greatest teacher aide in the history of teacher aide. But something was kind of off. Because I noticed when her children would come in the classroom, because her kids went to the same school, but they were in different classrooms, and I would always speak to them. And she had two daughters, and they would back up like I was dirty or something. And so my teacher pulled me to the side one day and said, "Well, Miss Ross's kids don't want to play with you. Don't bother them. And it didn't, as a small child, that's not registering. I didn't know the lady was prejudiced and her husband was prejudiced. Had no way of knowing. But she was in a school, and when she said that to me, my childhood innocence was lost that day. I'll never forget it. When she said, "You should be proud to be called a nigger. That's what you are." It was like the whole world went from color like we are behind me to black and white. And I saw the world like that for many years. That was a defining moment in my life. When that lady said that to me, I saw things. I was no longer a child. I was just a little boy at that point. Never saw things the same after that. Never. And but then my 4th grade year, it's cool. I had a black teacher, a black lady. My kindergarten, 1st grade, and 2nd and 3rd grade, I had white teachers. But 4th grade, I had a black teacher. And this lady was old school black lady. She was so nice. She was, and I'll never forget Miss Walker. Oh, she was stunned. Everybody got it. If you acted up, everybody, black, white, undecided, you got your behind lit up with that power. She was fair. She was firm, but she was fair with everybody. So everybody got the same treatment. But she had this saying that she had hung up in her classroom that really stuck out with me. I wish I'm gonna Google it and find out where it came from. It said, "There once was an owl that sat on an oak. The more he heard, the less he spoke. The less he spoke, the more he learned. Why can't we all be like this wise old bird?" And it had to have left an impression on me, because to this day, I'll be 55 tomorrow, and I still recite that sometimes to people. Whenever they run in their mouth, basically they're saying, you're not going to learn anything running your mouth. You need to shut up and open your ears and close your mouth. You got 2 ears and one mouth for a reason. Listen more, speak less. So that's the message I got from it. And I've taken that with me my entire life. But yeah, that was she left a big impact on my life. I don't know if she's still alive or not, but God, if she is, God bless her. Yeah. And then my parents moved to Alabama. My dad always wanted to move back home where he's from. And I was excited at the time. I'm like, yeah, I get to be around my cousins, da 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 da. Be careful what you ask for. Yeah, I was around family. But what I was familiar with, being in a city, going from city life to farm life, big change. The people were different. Longest 7 years of my life. I'll just leave it right there. But one incident, I won't go year by year, but there are some things that happen that lead me to this statement that I'm about to tell you. Don't let anger or hatred or fear be your motivation for anything. Love should always be your motivation. Always let love be your motivation. Never fear, anger, or hatred. And the fuel to my fire, those 7 years I was in Alabama, when I was out there with my parents, was fear, anger, and hatred. I had this big chip on my shoulder. I'll show these sons of bitches. I'll show them. But what do you do when you're no longer angry? What do you do when you're no longer scared? What do you do when you don't hate no more? Where's your source of motivation going to come from? If that was your fuel to your fire and that's gone now, what are you going to do? You have to replace it with something. But love is forever. So whatever you do, have love at the center of it. You will always be all right. So there was a group of teachers that didn't care too much for me. There were some kids that didn't care too much for me. And that's fine, that's life. But I had a kid that was so jealous of me. Kids would pick fights with me because I didn't receive free lunch. Can you imagine that? Somebody that jealous of you that they fight you because they get free lunch and you don't. Oh, you think you better than us because your parents pay for your lunch. No, I don't. Or during recess, your parents can buy you nicer clothes to wear. So during recess, they'll rip your shirt, try to dirty your clothes up. Things like try to push your face in an ant bed on the playground. Just stuff like that. Yeah, I went through that. But anyway, teacher, what was this group of teachers? Mind you, my mom worked at the school that I went to the entire time I was there. So every time I turn around, oh, I'm going to tell your mama this, I'm going to tell your mama that. They walking down the hall. I couldn't catch a break. The snitching was at an all-time high. And because of that, I became rebellious and angry, resentful, defiant, whatever you want to say. Just a kid trying to find his way in the world. And I started playing football. Originally, I was in the band. I really love music. I love the arts. That's why I'm back in film. But they fired the guy that was teaching band. And I just lost the love for it. I played trombone, which is what my second oldest son now plays. I didn't try to influence him. He picked it up on his own, drums and trombone. And that's, but I play football. Oh, you're a big kid. You should be playing football. You out here in the band, that's sissy stuff. Da, 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 da. This was adults telling me this. You should be playing football. I like to play during recess, but I never had no interest in no organized football. But I was a big kid. And I was strong and I was fast. So played it. Got good at it. Got good at it to the point that I was able to get colleges recruiting me. I always had good grades. Stick a pin in that. I always had good grades. But anyway, these teachers, I ended up getting a college scholarship. It was a group of teachers in the teachers' lounge. My cousin was the high school guidance counselor at the school I went to. He walks in on them. They had a hat. They were passing a hat around, putting $20 each in the hat. It was about 10. It was a betting pool. The point is, they bet that I was going to go to school, either quit or get kicked out, that I fall flat on my face. And my cousin overheard. He said, how much y'all got in there? And he looked, he said, you know what? He just reached in his pocket. He said, I got $200. Says, my cousin's going to make it. Because I was so frustrated by the time my senior year came around, I had made up my mind I was going to drop out and join Job Corps and get my GED and just go on with my life. And I got the paperwork from the office, and I was driving up to the Board of Education to, turning in, let them know I'm dropping out of school. And I was going over to Job Corps. I snuck up and I was going to do it. My cousin found out. He got in his car. He came behind me. And he grabbed me by my collar. I'll never forget it. He said, you're going to finish. You're not going to get these sons of bitches the satisfaction of making you quit any goddamn thing. You're going to finish school. And he followed me in his car and my car all the way back to the school, made sure I went back to class. And every day he would come in from that until the day I graduated. He made sure I went to class every day. And if I wasn't in school that day, he called my parents. Like, hey, let me talk to Daryl. And because of him, I finished school. I finished school because of him. And I always tell his children, because he had 6 kids, all of them graduated high school, and all of them finished college. And I told him what he did for me. I said, if it hadn't been for him, I'd have been on the street somewhere or in jail or dead. But I joined the fraternity that I joined because of him. I looked up to him so much. If he had been the first black man in the KKK, I would have been the second, just because of him. That's how much he meant to me. Um, he saved my life in more ways than one. And for years, I never told it until I wrote my film script. When I was in the 7th grade, I was a racist white ROTC teacher. And my mom worked at the school, so I would ride to school with her because I didn't have a driver's license at the time. So I'd be in the gym trying to shoot some baskets out before the kids got there, because we'd get there early because my mom was she was a Head Start teacher. So she had to get there and set things up. So I'm walking around the school. I went to the gym. So he was there. He saw me. He grabbed me by the collar. He took me under the stairwell in the gym. He tried to molest me. And I kneed him in his groin, and I ran away. Now, later on, that same school year, my cousin, who's a counselor, he put his hands on my cousin. And my cousin's a small man. And this racist guy, he was a pretty big size. He was about the size I am now, maybe a little bit bigger. And my cousin beat the living hell out of him. You know, of course, they suspended both of them for like a week or so with pay or whatever. Because they got in a fight. Well, it wasn't a fight. He got his ass whooped. And you couldn't tell me that my cousin Terry, God rest his soul, wasn't the greatest human being that ever walked the earth. Yeah. And I remember when I was about to graduate from graduate school, 6 months before I finished graduate school, he died on Christmas Eve, and they buried him New Year's Eve, 1992. I had just gotten married. My grandfather died Labor Day of that year. So in that year, it was a sad year. On both sides of my family, I think 29, 30 people died. So it was just like, 1992 was just a horrible year. The only thing I could think good to happen that year, got married, I joined the fraternity. Everything else was just a blur of funerals and obituaries. But I remember sitting with him before he got sick and passed away. He said, God will only put on you, he's not going to put on you more than you can bear. He said, don't ever forget that. And I was sitting in his living room. And that was after we had buried my grandfather. That was the few hours after the funeral. I just went up to his house because that's where everybody was hanging out. And little did I know, months later, he'd be gone. But when those people put that money in the hat, he said, I got $200. My cousin's going to graduate. He's going to graduate. And he went and he pulled me out of class. I'll never forget it. He said, he told me about the story. He said, I got money riding on you, boy. He said, you better finish school. He said, you understand me? That was my senior year. I said, yeah. That was spring of my senior year. Yeah. He said, you better graduate college because you're going to finish high school. He said, but when you get to college, you're going to finish. Yeah. I got hurt and I couldn't play football anymore my freshman year of college. But I graduated college in 3 years. I graduated college in 3 years. And I was really motivated because of that and because of my mom's dad. My grandfather on my mother's side was a victim of the Tuskegee experiment. And the hospital that he died in was on campus where I went to college. So every day, 4 or 5 times a day, I had to drive by that hospital where he died. And I see the loading dock where they wheeled his body into the hearse. And I said that if I had to die trying, no matter what it took, I was going to finish college. And I finished a year early. And my parents, by this time, my mother was working on campus, and my dad was working on campus, and my brother was working on campus. I graduated. And then I went to grad school. Finished grad school in a year. It normally takes you 2 years. I finished that in a year. So in 4 years, I had a bachelor's and a master's degree. I'm not saying that to brag. I'm just letting you know I believe very highly in education, and I work hard. And that's why I can't stand people that are lazy around me or that are unmotivated. It just burns me up. I can't stand it. Lukewarm enthusiasm is not my thing. So that's kind of the groundwork of who I am, young man that I became. Then I moved to Atlanta. A lot of frustrating years in Atlanta. Bad relationships, marital problems, bad relationships after the marriage, frustration with jobs. That was my first experience with a lot of racism was when I moved to Atlanta, because from the time I was 9 or 10 to the age of 23, I was in a predominantly black environment, because I grew up in a county, Macon County, Alabama, that was 98%, 99% black. So I might go days at a time and not see a white person. And then when I moved to Atlanta, I'm like, where all these white people come from? It was like a shock. And then I had to deal with in-your-face racism, because you're in the South. I don't care how big Atlanta is, you're in the South. And overt racism, outright racism. 23-year-old black man with a master's degree. You ain't getting no job, because ain't nobody gonna hire you. You half their age with twice the education. And my experience was in human resources, because nobody's gonna hire a 23-year-old black man with a master's degree, because they know within inside of a year to 18 months you're gonna be the supervisor of the whole thing, and they're not gonna have that. So I had menial jobs, just crappy jobs for years and years and years, and I began to become bitter and angry and frustrated, because I wasn't able to find the job that I was qualified for. And I got in the school system. And this kid falsely accused me of hurting them. And it was an election year. So originally they were going to charge me with misdemeanor. And then, because it wasn't true. And luckily for me, I was in a union. I was able to hire a lawyer. And they bumped all my charges up to a felony. Paul Howard, the guy that was the district attorney before this lady that's prosecuting Trump, she beat him out. And Paul Howard is the uncle of Dwight Howard, the NBA basketball player. He's also the same district attorney that tried to, when Ray Lewis caught that murder charge in Atlanta during the Super Bowl one year, he tried to prosecute Ray Lewis and send him to prison. That same guy. And the superintendent of the school system at that time, she got on the phone, I'll never forget it. I found out about it after the fact. She said, make an example out of him. She told Mr. Howard that, make an example out of him. Later on, because I was facing 60 years in prison for something I didn't do. Later on, she got indicted, and she was facing 66 years in prison. See how God worked? And she died before she could be. She had got convicted, but they was getting ready to sentence her, and she died before they could sentence her. And then I remember all those news cameras in front of my house. Something happened to every one of those news guys that were sticking mics in my face. One of them got strung out on crack real bad. He ended up losing his job. He ended up going to prison himself for like 3-4 years. Gus Savage, and for those of you in Atlanta, know Gus Savage. That's what happened to him. He was all out in front of my house with his news crew and everything. Yeah, I remember those days. But anyway, fast forward. I was able to clear my name. I took a plea deal because I'd never been in no trouble, man. I just wanted to get this behind me. Biggest mistake I ever made in my life. I took what they call a first offender status. That means after I did probation, paid a fine, whatever, I could have petitioned to have it expunged off my record. And worst decision I ever made. I should have fought it because I was innocent. But I never gave up on clearing my name. And eventually I did. The kid recanted his story. By this time, he's right before, strangely enough, right before he dropped out of school and he turned to a life of crime. One day, him and his crew was breaking into somebody's house, and the guy was home, pulled both barrels of a shotgun and blew him away as his body was hanging halfway into the house. Blew all of this off. But he had recanted his story, but I was trying to get it overturned. And like, no, you took a first offender plea. No, you just got to deal with it. So I kept trying. So eventually, I got it done with the help of John Lewis. Good trouble. The man that said, get into some good trouble. He put in a word for me with the governor at the time. And I got my name cleared. And I packed my bags. By this time, I wasn't married. I moved to New York. I was a professional actor. I did stand-up comedy for a while, and then I became a professional actor. I got my Screen Actors Guild card, and I flipped the court. I said, heads, New York, tails, LA. And it landed heads, so I called my fraternity brother, my college classmate. He let me stay with him, and I moved to New York for a couple of years. And then I moved here. And I said all that to say this. You're never too old to dream. You're never too old to turn your life around. Don't become bitter. I made that mistake for many, many years, being bitter and angry. I made some bad decisions, and I own up to that. Some people that were in my life that shouldn't have been. Some relationships I was in that I shouldn't have been with women who didn't have my best interest at heart. You live and you learn. And I continue, unfortunately, to learn, not just in romantic sense, but just in business and personal. Be very careful of who you keep in your circle. Very, very careful. And to the women over the years that I've loved that didn't love me back, I thank you. Because when I see how your life turned out and the people you end up dealing with and the chaos that followed you, your no was hurtful at the time, but God keeping you out of my life was a blessing. Because you were taking me down the rabbit hole with you. And I thank God now. Looking back, I thank God. It hurt at the moment, but I thank God looking back that you said no for whatever reason and turned me down and decided not to reciprocate the love I had for you. I have 3 children. I have lost 2 children. My youngest son was a twin, and the other twin didn't make it. And then, for those of you who know, I had another child. I was doing stand-up comedy. My girlfriend at the time was against me doing stand-up comedy. She said if I went ahead with it, she was going to get an abortion and put me out on the street. And she did just that. There was a time where I was homeless, doing comedy, making people laugh, and I'm sleeping on people's couches. I'm sleeping in my car. I'm washing up in truck stops. I'm sleeping in raggedy, roach-infested hotels. Sitting in the library all day because I wanted to be somewhere that was cool in the summer and warm in the winter. And I would read books all day. Things of that nature. I've been there. I know what it's like. I've been there. Yep, I've been there. I paid my dues, man. I have paid my dues. I've survived cancer. I've had 2 nervous breakdowns. I've had COVID. I've had a stroke. Just things, man. I've been to jail for something I didn't do. I've had so-called friends tell me not to call them or come back around them again. I've been lied to, lied on, and lied about. But God has allowed me, if I wake up at 2:47 a.m., has allowed me to see the age of 55, a birthday I never thought I'd see. God is a truly good God. God is a good God. I remember on my 40th birthday, I was like, oh, I'm 40 now. And what happened on my 40th birthday? Farrah Fawcett died that morning. Michael Jackson died at lunchtime. That was my 40th birthday. Yep. Mm-hmm. That was my 40th birthday. Dang. That was my 40th birthday. Well, here I am. Scratches and bruises and cuts all over me. On my heart where you can't see, in my mind where you can't see. But here I am. Only thing that's gonna hurt tonight when I go to sleep, every year, from the time I went off to college to my mother passing, I would get a phone call at 2:47 a.m. And she was always say the same thing. You know what I was doing at 2:47 and whatever age I was? She said, well, if she was still alive, she said, well, 55 years ago, you know what I was doing at 2:47 in the morning? And I'd laugh. I said, I don't know, you tell me. I was having you. I gave birth to you. I won't get that call this year. I didn't get it last year either. My mother passed in February. It was my second birthday without that call. My mother's birthday was June 13th, and mine's on the 25th of June. So from now on going forward, her birthday, Father's Day in between, and my birthday shortly thereafter, just ain't the same. On Father's Day, not getting a call, not calling my dad, wishing him happy Father's Day, and in return, him saying happy Father's Day to me, just ain't the same. But that's the circle of life. You know, your parents are supposed to pass away before you. I've had the unpleasant experience of losing 2 children. That's not normal. That's not how life is supposed to be. My kids are supposed to bury me, not me bury them. But I still go on because I thank God for my parents instilling values in me that I'm able to take and pass on to my children. And as I end this video, I just want to talk to them for a minute. There's going to come a time when I'll no longer be here. I got more years behind me than I do in front of me now. That's just life. But just know, I love you. And even when I'm no longer here, down here, I'm with you here, and I'll be with you here until we see each other again. Trust in God. Do the right thing, even when nobody's looking. Always let love be your motivation for everything you do, never anger or fear or hatred. Treat people the way you want them to treat you, even if they don't do it back. Don't let them make you lower who you are. God sees everything. He will bless you. Whatever you do privately, He will reward you in public. I'm a living witness to that. Something as simple as holding a door open for somebody when they're walking through, helping somebody carry something, or helping an elderly person, or saying yes ma'am, no ma'am, yes sir, no sir. Good manners. Good manners and respect will take you farther than any degree or educational job skill you may have. Good manners and respecting yourself and other people will take you a long way in this world. Trust me. When you're in doubt, pray about it. Sit down and wait on God to give you the answer up here, and then you think about it. And if God don't answer you, that's your answer. He ain't ready for you to move. Sit still. Treat people the way you want them to treat you. That's the thing I can tell you. And don't take crap off nobody. All that being passive and all that other nonsense, no. Mm-mm. People confuse meekness with weakness. You're nobody's punching bag. You have a right to defend yourself, physically and with your mouth and with your mind. But be wise with your doing. There's a time and a place for everything. Read Ecclesiastes 3. Read those first 10 or 11 verses. There's a time and a place for everything under the sun. Choose your battles wisely. And beware of bad people, but especially bad women. The worst thing you can be doing in life is being attached to a quarrelsome woman. Stay away from all of that. Better to be alone than be miserable. I'm here to tell you. People tell you they love you all the time, and then you look up, they cheat on you. Or you look up, you thinking she carrying your child and she got another man's child. Or they telling you they love you and lay right up next to another man while they're on the phone with you. It happens. Trust me, son, I've been there. Trust me, boys, I've been there. Be very careful. Everything that is good to you ain't good for you. Everything that looks good ain't good. Look at the heart. Look at the heart, son. Look at the heart. People will say and do a lot of things, but their actions speak for them. Trust me on that. And you'll be all right in life, even when I ain't here for you to pick up the phone and say, hey, Dad, I got this problem. Hey, Pop, what. Because there's going to come a time when I'm not going to be here no more. Just like I had to bury my daddy, you're going to have to bury me. Well, cremate me, but I ain't going to be here no more. That's my point. And you're going to have to deal with this stuff on your own, son. But don't let it scare you. Don't let it unnerve you. God is not going to forsake you. Even as much as I love you, as much as your mother loves you, there's going to come times when we're going to fail you. We're going to disappoint you. We're going to let you down. We're going to make you mad. But God's not going to do that, ever. Because we can't. God is perfect. He can't fail you. It's not in God's nature to fail. But just know that we love you. I love you. That's what I wanted to say to you the day before my birthday. And for everybody that I've known over my life that I'm sending this video to, if you ever let me sleep on your couch, if you ever fed me, if you ever said something to just keep me from losing my mind, you ever helped me or did something nice for me in any way, just know that I love you from the bottom of my heart, and I will never forget your kindness. And I thank you. I will never forget you. And if you passed on, I'm gonna try to help your children the way you helped me, or your grandchildren. I'm gonna pay it forward. You bless me, so I'm gonna bless somebody in your family in return. The same way, same kindness you gave me, I'm gonna extend to members of your family. I'm gonna try to leave the world in a better condition than when I found it. That's all any of us can do. And we all take the attitude the world will be a better place. There's a lot of evil out here. Sometimes I get discouraged. I know what it feels like to be so hurt and so broken that I open my mouth to cry or holler out and no sound will come out. I've been so hurt that I open my mouth to cry out to God and no sound will come out. But my soul cried out for me. God answered me. He'll answer you too. I've been on here 59 minutes and some seconds. And I want to keep it under an hour. Just enjoy the rest of your day. And you be safe out there. I'll probably go live a little bit tomorrow for my birthday because some of my friends. And then I'm going to enjoy my time. I'm going to be 55. Thank you, Lord. I'm going to be 55 years old. I'll be damned. I love you. Take care.